You are frustrated, maybe even angry. You work hard, you try to save money, but you can't get ahead. What's going on? Since this is my podcast, all 382 episodes of it, today I'm going to abandon the normal format, no intro music, no guest, just me giving you my thoughts on why so many of us are angry. Spoiler alert, this mess we are in is not your fault. I'm going to tell you the three big forces that have got us where we are, and I'll end with my thoughts on what you can do about it. You may say, well, I know what the problem is. Since early 2020, the problem has been the big bad virus. It caused a lot of health problems, and then we had the lockdowns, which caused a lot of economic problems, and, well, here we are. True, but we had a lot of economic problems long before the big bad virus, like the cost of housing. According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, the average price of a home in Canada has increased over 300% over the last 17 years. According to Statistics Canada, during that same period, the average hourly wage in Canada has increased by 55%, but the cost of ground beef is up 121%, baby food is up 186%, and potatoes are up over 200%. Potatoes that we use to make French fries, nature's most perfect side dish, are up over 200%. You see the problem? Your pay went up by 55%, but you're paying twice as much for a bag of potatoes and 3 times as much for your house. That has nothing to do with the virus. These trends started a lot earlier than 2020. So who's to blame? The politicians, of course. A bunch of old men whose names start with the letter T. Toronto Mayor John Tory, Opposition Leader O'Toole, Trudeau, Trump. The politicians are to blame. Well, you believe that, don't you? You believe that your guy can fix it and the other guy is evil. Well, I've got some bad news for you. Your guy can't fix it. Why? Because the problem is bigger than your guy. Let me ask you this. If I was to climb onto the roof of a bungalow, a one-story house, and jump off, what would happen? I'd probably break my leg, or worse. Why? Because of those idiot politicians? No, because of gravity. I don't really understand how it works. I don't understand how the Earth creates gravity, but I know from experience that if I jump up, I will very quickly come back down. That's the way it is. I can shake my fist at the air and yell about the unfairness of gravity, but it's just the way it is. That's gravity. Okay, this is a Canadian podcast, so let's talk hockey. In the last NHL hockey season, 1/3 of the players scored 80% of the goals. That doesn't seem fair. You start with 2 6-year-old kids, very close in ability, but one is slightly better and gets slightly more ice time and gets better and gets put on the traveling team and gets more ice time and gets better coaching. So by the age of 22, one of them is playing in the NHL and the other one plays once a week on Tuesday at 10 p.m. in a beer league. That's the way it goes. And it's the same in the business world. The top car salesperson at the car dealership closes more deals, so the boss gives them more leads, so they close even more deals. That's how it works. The rich get richer. It has always been this way. The English poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, in his essay A Defense of Poetry, written exactly 200 years ago in 1821, referred to a phrase that was common at the time. To him that hath, more shall be given, and from him that hath not, the little that he hath shall be taken away. The rich become richer, and the poor have become poorer. Of course, this concept had been known for thousands of years. It was in the Bible. It's called the parable of the talents. The basic story is that the boss is going away on a long trip, so he calls in 3 of his employees. I guess back then they were slaves. And he says, guy number 1, here's 5 talents, which according to the internet is about 15 years' wages, so about $750,000 in today's money. Guy number 2, here's $100,000. Guy number 3, here's 50 grand. The first guy, who I guess was quite the business dude, invested in stocks or real estate or crypto or whatever and doubled his money. The second guy, same thing. He had a smaller amount, but he also managed to double it. The third guy, very risk averse, didn't want to get yelled at for losing the money, so he dug a hole in the ground and dumped it in. So eventually the boss man comes back and he's quite happy with the first 2 dudes for doubling their money. So he says, good job, I'm going to give you even more stuff to manage. Cool. But the third guy says, sorry boss, I didn't want to get yelled at, so I just buried it in the ground. And the boss is really pissed and he starts yelling at him and he calls him wicked and lazy. And he says, you could have at least gone to the bank and put it in a savings account or a GIC and earned some interest. You took the time and physical labor to dig a deep hole. It would have been easier to just walk to the bloody bank. There's one on every corner and they're open 8 till 8. And if you have the app on your phone, well, you can access it 24/7. And the guy says, boss, we live in a very low interest rate environment. The central bank is keeping interest rates artificially low to make it easier for people to borrow so we can speculate in real estate. Because if real estate crashes, the economy is pooch, so I couldn't earn any interest. Well, at least that's my interpretation. I'm not a biblical scholar, so I could be wrong. The boss ain't buying that story, so he grabs the 50 grand from guy number 3 and gives it all to guy number 1. So the guy who started with the smallest amount ends up with nothing, and the guy who was given the most, he gets even more. The rich get richer. That's not fair, so why does it happen? It could be that bosses are evil, or it could be that that's the way it is. The big get bigger. The 6-year-old hockey player who is slightly better ends up going to the NHL, scoring most of the goals. Or in business, the person who starts out with a bit more money ends up with a lot more. Think about a game like Monopoly. How does the game end? One player has all of the money and everyone else has nothing. That's how it works. But that's a game. That's not real life. What does real life look like? Well, in Canada in 2019, of the 29 million people who filed taxes, the top 1% of filers earned 10% of the total income, and the bottom 50% earned about 18% of the total income earned by all Canadians. Doesn't seem fair, does it? Now, when I say the word income, I don't mean paycheck. The rich don't earn most of their income from their weekly paycheck. They earn it from investments. Lower income people get most of their income from salaries and wages. Higher income people get more of their income from investment income, like dividends and capital gains when they make money selling stocks. How can you earn investment income? Well, you have to have investments. You have to start with some money to be able to invest. If you have no money because you don't earn enough to save anything, well, you won't have any investments, so you can't earn any investment income. The more you have, the more you can make, and that's how the rich get richer. If you keep earning a lot of money each year, after a few years, you have a lot of wealth. Like Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy who built a rocket.
I'm so rich.
Rocket Man's wealth changes every day, but it appears to be over $177 billion at the moment, a few billion higher than other rich guys like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. According to Wikipedia, the top 10% of households in the United States hold 70% of the country's wealth, and the bottom 50% held 2%. That definitely doesn't seem fair. Did Jeff Bezos really work that much harder than you did? Does he really deserve it? No, but that's how it works. If you had cash and bought the S&P 500 index at the bottom of the crash in March of 2020, you were able to more than double your money in a year and a half. And even if you just held your stocks through the crash, it took only 5 months for stocks to recover their losses, and then it was over a year of up, and away. If you had no cash to invest, well, you couldn't take advantage of that opportunity. But why? Why do the rich start out with money they can invest and then get richer, and why does everyone else fall behind? Why does this make you feel so angry? I'll give you 3 reasons. First, demographics. World War II caused the greatest loss of human life in human history, so when the war ended, the population got to work making babies, leading to the biggest baby boom in the history of the world. World War II ended in September 1945, so just over 9 months later, in 1946, the baby boom started, and it lasted for around 20 years, from 46 to 65, with over 8 million babies born, for an average of over 412,000 babies per year. By sake of comparison, by 2008, the population of Canada was about twice as big, but there were only 378,000 babies born. So you have 8 million babies born in Canada, but then, of course, we got lots of immigration. So today in Canada, we have well over 9 million people between the ages of 56 and 76 who are considered baby boomers. That's a broad range. I was born in 64, and I don't consider myself a baby boomer. My parents were like 10 years old when the war ended, so I don't fit the technical definition. But regardless, here's my point. There are a lot of people who were born after the war. So what? Well, think about it. What happened to you when you left school? You were 18 years old or 22 or whatever. You got your first job, rented an apartment, bought a table and a chair and a TV for your apartment, and maybe you bought a car. What happens when 8 million people in Canada and tens of millions of people in North America are entering the workforce and dramatically increasing their spending all at the same time? Prices explode. They go way up. By 1967, the first baby boomers were entering the workforce. By 75, the average baby boomer was in the workforce. Everything went up in price. The inflation rate in Canada in 1960 was less than 2%. In 1974, it was 11%. More people buying more stuff makes prices go up. And yeah, I know America went off the gold standard in 1971, which likely made the problem worse, but let's stick with the main point. Supply and demand. More people want stuff, the price goes up until we can increase production to bring prices down again. That's stuff. What about wages? Well, if millions of people enter the labor market in a short period of time, what happens to wages? Supply and demand. Lots of people looking for work, wages don't go up. If you look at earnings and adjust for inflation, real wages increased steadily after the war and continued to increase until 1977 when they peaked, and they didn't get back to that same level until 2009. That's over 30 years when real wages for the average worker didn't increase. And even today, real wages are still not that much higher than they were over 40 years ago. And it's not just the baby boomers. The last baby boomer entered the workforce around 1986. But guess who else was also in the workforce in the 1980s and the 1990s with the baby boomers? Their kids. If you were born in 1946, then had a kid in 1966, that kid could also be in the workforce in 1986. You put two population bulges in the workforce at the same time, and the competition for jobs keeps wages from going up. You see the problem? Prices are going up, wages are not going up, so you feel poorer. It's not your fault. It's demographics. If you happen to be born in the 1950s, there is a good chance that you got a virtually free education, ended up with a good job, and bought a nice house, and started a family and have investments. If you were born in the 1990s, you are literally stuck with a large student loan and no way to ever buy a house. Your financial success, or lack thereof, is largely dependent on the year you were born. So one of the causes of our current state of affairs is demographics. But there's another force to be reckoned with: technology. Technology eliminates jobs. In 1950, a good job was pumping gas at the gas station. That's not a job anymore. The gas pump is now a computer. I swipe my card and do it myself. And if in the future we're all driving electric cars, we won't even go to the gas station. We'll plug our cars in at home. Gas stations won't exist, and neither will the job of the person who drives that big tanker truck that delivers gas. Gone. There used to be a lot of grocery store cashiers. Now with self-checkout computers, you can do it yourself. Remember when you used to have to take your paycheck to the bank every payday and wait in line for the teller to deposit it? Then they invented bank machines so you could do it yourself. Then they invented electronic deposit, so now your paycheck goes into your bank account automatically. When was the last time you were actually inside a bank? You don't remember, do you? Well, bank teller used to be a great job, well paid because you were handling money. Now, technology has largely replaced that job, so bank tellers are not well paid, and a lot of them only get part-time hours because technology replaced them. Guess what? Technology will eventually replace almost every job. You disagree. There's no way a computer or a robot could do my job. I'm safe. I'm sure that was what the gas station attendants, grocery stores, and bank tellers also said. So why is someone born in the 1990s not able to keep up with someone born in the 50s or 60s? Why could the boomers afford a house and the millennials can't? Demographics. And why does it seem like there are fewer well-paying entry-level jobs? Technology. That's 2 strikes against you. No wonder you're having a hard time of it. So is that it? I feel poorer because of demographics and disruptive technology? No, there's one more force to consider. Let's continue our chat about the game of Monopoly. The game starts with everyone getting $1,500, but let's play a simpler version where everyone starts with $100. We are all equal at the start. You roll the dice and you land on the chance square on the board, and it says, "The bank will hold an auction to sell Park Place to the highest bidder." Okay, how much can you bid? How much can anyone bid? Well, $100 because that's all the cash you have. There's no debt in the game of Monopoly. You can't get a mortgage. But just before the bidding starts, the banker says, "Wait, I've decided to give everyone an additional $20. So the banker pulls out some paper and writes $20 on it and signs it so it's legal and gives each player a piece of paper with $20 written on it, and boom, now each player has $120. So now the auction starts for Park Place. What is the maximum each player can bid? Well, it's not $100, it's $120. The supply of money went up, so now you have more dollars to spend. Did the property you were bidding on change? Does it have more rooms or more land or more anything? No, the property is exactly the same. The only difference is that there is more money, so you can bid more. That's it. That's what happened. Now I know what you're thinking. Who cares about Monopoly? It's just a game. Good point. So let's talk about real life. If the government prints more money, would that make prices go up? Is real life similar to the game of Monopoly? Well, I'm no economist. I just play one on this podcast, but it sure seems like it. More dollars in circulation leads to higher prices. In Canada, the money supply always goes up. The money supply in Canada since 1946 is up 10,000%. That's a lot of money that the banker in the game created out of thin air. Okay, maybe that's too long a time frame. Here's the same chart since January 2020. It's up 23%. Over a period of 21 months between January 2020 and September 2021, the money supply in Canada increased by 23%. I realize the math isn't exact, but it's like a 1 percentage point increase every month. That's a lot. Are you surprised that the prices you are paying at the grocery store seem to be a lot higher than 2 years ago? Could the increase in the money supply be the reason? I don't know. I'm just throwing out numbers. You get to decide what it all means. Here are more facts. Since the start of the pandemic in the spring of 2020, the government of Canada has paid out almost $100 billion to employers under the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and around $74 billion directly to Canadians through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, CERB. So payments from just those two programs will cost around $175 billion. Where does the money come from? Did the government increase taxes by $175 billion? No, in simple terms, they increased the money supply to do it. With these programs and other spending, the federal government will run a deficit of somewhere around $400 billion for 2021. That money is electronically created. That's how the government could send businesses and individuals all of that money. Now, I know what you're thinking. The government couldn't just lock everyone in their apartments and not give them money to buy food. They had to help out. I'm not arguing with you. Don't get so defensive. I'm not here to argue that the government should be spending more money or less money. I'm simply stating the fact that there is more money now in circulation than there was in the past, and if the money supply is increasing faster than actual goods in the economy, it would appear that prices go up. Let me say that another way. Your money is worth less. Don't think of money in terms of dollars. Think of money in terms of time. How many hours do you need to work to fill up your car, or to buy groceries for the week, or to pay the rent? It seems like you have to work more to get the same amount of stuff. That's why you feel frustrated or angry. It takes more time to get the same amount of stuff as it took in the past. Your money is degrading. Your money is wasting away. You eat a fresh apple and it tastes great. You put that same apple on your kitchen counter and leave it there for a few months, it'll rot. It gets worse over time, just like your money. It's rotting away. Now, of course, an economist would not say your money is rotting away. That's not an economic term. They call it inflation because that sounds better. Over the last 20 years, the inflation rate in Canada has averaged around 2% per year. That doesn't sound like much. 2%. But let's look at it another way. If something cost 100 cents in 2002 and you keep adding inflation to it, that same thing cost 151 cents at the end of 2020. We're talking about the Canadian Consumer Price Index here, a basket of goods. So if the basket of goods you buy is different than what Statistics Canada says the average Canadian buys, well, your results will be different. But it makes sense, doesn't it? In 2002, you could go to the grocery store and buy your food and supplies and maybe it cost you $100, but today it costs you over $150. Or you can look at it another way. What cost you 66 cents in 2002 costs $1 today. So here's my question. Are you better off today than you were in the past? Are you happy that you have to pay $1 for something that cost 66 cents 18 years ago? Well, the answer depends on your situation. If you bought a house 18 years ago and it's worth 3 times what you paid for it, maybe you're not worried about paying 50% more for daily living expenses. If your paycheck is going up faster than inflation, again, maybe you're happy. But if you are a wage earner and you don't own a house or stocks, then your costs are going up, but your assets aren't going up because you don't have any. You are worse off. And you're frustrated because people who were lucky enough to buy a house or invest in the stock market in the past are now better off. The increase in the money supply doesn't affect everyone the same. Wage earners get killed. Asset owners, people who own houses or stocks, do great. That creates inequality. The divide between the poor and the rich grows bigger, and if you didn't benefit from inflation, that increasing inequality makes you angry. Inflation is like bacteria that gets in an apple. You can't see it. The first day or two, it doesn't make any difference. But if you leave the apple on the counter for long enough, it rots away. Money is the same. The devaluation of your money has happened slowly, so it's not obvious, so you don't realize you should be mad at your money. Instead, you get mad at the politicians or that guy on Twitter. We only follow people on Twitter who agree with us. We only watch the TV news channel that agrees with us. And that divide grows ever wider. We don't talk to each other anymore. So if the money supply is going up and you aren't getting it, where is it going? I already told you, the rich get richer. More specifically, the asset holders get richer and the wage earners get comparatively poorer. Inflation is a wealth transfer mechanism. It takes value from a wage earner and gives it to the person who owns a house or stocks or some other hard asset. And that's why you are angry. It's invisible. It moves slowly so you don't see it. Well, that was a real downer of a podcast. Thanks for cheering me up. I guess all hope is lost and I should just give up? No, that's not my point. I did this podcast to explain what I think is happening. I showed you my work. I'll put links to all of my sources in the show notes on YouTube, so feel free to crunch the numbers and poke holes in my reasoning and come to your own conclusions. I may be wrong, but what I think is happening is that there are invisible forces acting on you right now. Demographics, technology, currency devaluation, our money is going bad. That all sounds depressing, but once you realize what's happening, you can take action to protect yourself. If the weather forecasting person says it's going to rain tomorrow, what do? Well, the weather forecast seems to be wrong as much as it's right, but if it's me, I'll put on a raincoat, bring an umbrella, and be ready for the rain. If you have an idea of what's happening, you can prepare for the future. That's why I made this podcast, not to depress you, but to help you prepare. How can you prepare? Well, let's think about it. I said there are three forces to be aware of: demographics, technology, and bad money. Let's start with demographics. 20% of the population is age 65 years or older, and they're getting older and living longer, so jobs in healthcare will likely be in high demand for many years. Another 20% of the population is between the ages of 25 and 39 years old, so I guess having a job that caters to that age range will be profitable in the coming years. They get married, have kids, buy houses and cars and stuff. Understanding where you fit in the demographics of the country may help you stay sane and plan for the future. The second force is technology. Any job that creates technology has a good chance of being in demand. But any job that can be replaced by technology is not secure. There's a big shortage of truck drivers now. Will that be the case in 10 years if we can actually perfect self-driving vehicles? I don't know. My advice is to sit in a dark room, perhaps grab a drink, and imagine how your job could be replaced by a computer or a robot. Technology will replace many jobs, but not all of them. And finally, we've got the problem of bad money. How can you protect yourself from bad money? I use the term bad money because I think that's a better description than inflation. Today, inflation is in the news, but I think that by the end of 2022, we won't be talking as much about inflation. I'll be surprised if inflation is higher than 2% in the final months of 2022. Why? Well, for all the reasons we've just discussed. Demographics. As the population ages, we buy less stuff, and that's deflationary. Technology. Technology makes stuff cheaper, and that's deflationary. Government money printing. They created a lot of money in 2020 and 2021. The money supply went up, but that's causing inflation, and too much inflation is bad, so in 2022, governments won't be sending money to everyone like they did during the pandemic. The money supply is already shrinking, and that's deflationary. And debt. We are carrying a lot of debt, and if interest rates tick up even a small amount, we have to take more of each paycheck to service our debt. So we have less money to spend on everything else. Debt is very deflationary. And yes, I know you have to look at more than just the money supply and debt levels. The velocity of money has a big impact on all of this, but this is only a half-hour podcast, so I can't go too deep into the weeds here. But the point is that it is quite possible that inflation will go down in 2022. So what do we do if we have less inflation? In times of inflation, debt is great. You can borrow money to buy a house, and with inflation, the price of the house goes up and the purchasing power of your dollars goes down, so you're paying off your mortgage in less valuable dollars. It's a win-win. The asset value goes up and the value of the debt goes down. That's the way it's been for the last decade, and so the person who borrowed as much as they could and bought as big a house as they could came out a winner. The person who borrowed money to invest in the stock market, same thing, they were a winner. The more you borrowed, the better. That's a great strategy when there's inflation. But if inflation slows down, or if we have a period of deflation, debt will kill you. You save $100,000, get a $900,000 mortgage, and buy a $1 million house. Great. But if we have deflation and your house drops in value by 10% and you sell it, you're wiped out. Your entire $100,000 down payment is gone. If you borrow money to buy stocks or crypto and prices drop, you are left with the debt and a less valuable asset. That's the problem with debt when there's deflation. Deflation is great. It makes stuff cheaper. But debt and deflation together is a killer. So my advice is to reduce your debt. If I'm wrong and inflation keeps growing and you've paid off your debt, great. You've got more money each month. Paying down debt is a risk-free strategy. You can't lose, whether or not I'm right or wrong about deflation. In a system where your savings in your savings account are reduced each year by a few percentage points due to inflation, you need to find a place to put your savings that won't be reduced by inflation. If you're saving for an event in the future, like buying a house or sending your kid to college or your own retirement, you need to find a way to protect your money. The solution is easy to say, but hard to do. The solution is that you need to put your money into hard assets, something that doesn't lose purchasing power when the money supply increases. What does that mean? Hey, I don't give investment advice, so this is an area you'll have to do a lot of research and figure out what makes sense for you in your own unique situation. For the last few thousand years, we've stored our wealth in gold. Now we use the stock market and real estate. Maybe tomorrow we'll use Bitcoin or something else. The point is that ultimately you're the boss, so you're going to have to spend the time and do the research to decide what is best for you and your family. Yes, the game is rigged. The rich get richer. Demographics and technology are forces in motion that you can't stop. Our money is bad. That's the way it is. So how do you fight against gravity? Understand the system. Try to move toward a career that will last. Pay down debt. The rich get richer, so the solution is to be one of the rich. Hey, thanks for the great advice. I'll try that. I don't mean try to be rich like Jeff Bezos. That ain't going to happen. I mean, try to be rich like people who have investments, because even if you have just a little bit of money, you have a big advantage. If you can manage to save a few bucks, you can take advantage of tax loopholes like a TFSA or an RESP or an RRSP. You save a few bucks, put it in an RSP, and get a bigger tax refund, which you can then put in your RSP, which gives you an even bigger tax refund next year, and your money grows from investments, just like the rich. The current situation in the world is not your fault. You didn't do anything to deserve the mess we're in. But if you understand what's happening, do a lot of research, pay down your debt, find a way to save a few bucks, and become a saver and investor, you've got a fighting chance to pull ahead of the pack. I think you can do it. Things may look bleak right now. No one has job security. The big bad virus is still with us. But I'm optimistic. I believe the human race will figure this out, because in all of history we have faced many battles, and so far the human race is undefeated. We're still here. Those are my rambling thoughts for today. Thanks for listening and watching. Please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.